Jake Paul's California mansion has been raided by the FBI, multiple news organizations report. You can see in this aerial footage agents in uniform outside his home in Calabasas.
When names like Anthony Joshua are invoked, they represent more than a single fight. They represent an idea. The idea of what happens when controlled environments fall away and a fighter is forced to face someone who cannot be negotiated with, scripted around, or protected by clauses. Elite competition has a way of exposing gaps that marketing can only hide for so long.
Paul's attorney says he was out of state and not at his Calabasas home during that raid today. The FBI says they're investigating allegations of criminal acts for an incident that he's known for being in the public eye. But today, YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
The volatility of this narrative is precisely what keeps viewers locked in. Each accusation sparks another clip, another interview, another denial, and another breakdown, creating a feedback loop where doubt itself becomes entertainment and controversy becomes the product. From a pure AVD perspective, the story works because it blends fear, scandal, authority figures, and unresolved questions, constantly pulling the audience forward with the promise that the next revelation will either confirm what they already suspect or completely overturn the narrative they thought they understood.
The weight difference in there, I only know one man that'll do the weight difference like that, and that's the Bronze Bomber. For me, in my opinion, I think it's scripted a little bit because, of the weight difference, and Joshua is a former champion, and also he's current, he's active, and this is going to be the first time that we see Paul fighting an active fighter. We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, it's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real professional.
At its core, this isn't just about Jake Paul as an individual. It reflects a deeper cultural tension between the traditional values of combat sports and the influencer era model of promotion, where control, virality, and optics can outweigh the brutal honesty that once defined fighting at the highest level. Whether Jake Paul ever escapes this cloud of credibility won't be decided by speeches or clapbacks, but by choices. If future fights prioritize risk over safety, transparency over control, and true competition over spectacle, perception can change. But if the same patterns continue, the audience will ultimately conclude that an illusion once cracked was never truly real.
There's been some reports about an apparent leaked script. Have you seen this?
Move on. If people think that he's going to do a quick two-step and do this, and this, I hope he just goes out and takes his head clean off with the first punch and lets him know who Tommy Fury actually is. There's one interview, and I'm going to name it now, Lyndon Arthur, absolute fantastic, that man. I don't read that much on social media because it's all bullshit, but Lyndon Arthur, thank you very much. From me to you, you said something about Tommy being a proper fighter, can really punch, one of the hardest punches he's been in. Now for Lyndon Arthur to go and say that, Lyndon Arthur's a proper hard, tough man, we all know that. So Lyndon, respect, thank you.
The shift in conversation around Jake Paul wasn't triggered by a single punch or one night in the ring. It came from a collective realization among boxing and MMA fans that spectacle, branding, and selective matchmaking were slowly supplanting competitive integrity. When names like Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Oscar de la Hoya, Dana White, and Michael Bisping entered the discussion, Paul began to be seen less as a fighter and more as a symbol of an engineered era, one where narratives are marketed harder than merit.
At any point, did you start to take your foot off the gas just a little bit because you noticed he was tiring out?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a bit. I wanted to give the fans a show, but I didn't want to hurt someone that didn't need to be hurt.
Did you carry Mike?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, there was a point where, I was just like, okay, he's not really engaging back. And so I don't know if he's tired or whatever. And I could just tell, his age was showing a little bit. And I just have so much respect for him. And that violence war thing between us, after he slapped me, I wanted to, be aggressive and take him down and knock him out and all that stuff. But that kind of went away as the rounds went on.
In the history of combat sports, real reckonings are rarely clean or cinematic. Jake Paul's story exists in that gray zone where public perception, whispered skepticism, and years of online debate collide. His rise was never just about wins and losses. It was about how those victories were packaged, explained, defended, and amplified until fans began questioning whether they were watching true competition or content disguised as combat. When allegations of rigged fights emerged, they didn't happen in isolation. Respected fighters like Deontay Wilder openly questioned the legitimacy of Paul's bouts. Oscar de la Hoya voiced what many insiders quietly suspected, and even casual viewers noticed patterns in glove sizes, round lengths, opponent selection, and promotional control that felt closer to exhibition than the unforgiving rigor of traditional professional boxing.
On performance-enhancing drugs.
If taking Viagra counts, then yes.
I'm gonna need a yes or a no.
No.
That's true.
Lucky.
Dr. Stuart Fisher, author of Little Book of Big Emergencies, underscores how the narrative around Jake Paul intensified after Paul admitted to easing off in certain moments. Alone, the comment could read as sportsmanship, but in context, it fueled skepticism. In elite boxing, managing the danger for your opponent is virtually unheard of, and Paul's admission reinforced the idea that some fights were paced for optics rather than decided by pure competition. The controversy around drug testing added fuel to the fire. Dana White's public challenge wasn't idle gossip, it was a demand for transparency from someone claiming legitimacy. And the lack of independently verified, publicly released test results allowed critics to fill the silence with speculation, connecting visible physical changes, historical resistance to strict anti-doping protocols, and insider commentary into a narrative that refused to fade.
That I use cocaine. I do not. So I told you, you could randomly cocaine test me for the next 10 years. I believe that you're a cheater, and I believe that you use steroids. So I want to randomly steroid test you for the next 2 years. And that thing that you came out with today, nobody on earth thinks that you really wrote that. You're too stupid.
Medical opinions, social media breakdowns, and commentary from figures like Dylan Danish added fuel to the fire, not because accusations alone proved anything, but because the sheer volume of voices created an environment where denial felt weaker than disclosure. Every refusal to provide documentation became, in the eyes of fans, another unanswered question piled onto an already crowded ledger. Promotional responses from MVP executives leaned heavily on legal language and defamation warnings. While such tactics are common in high-stakes business, they often backfire in fight culture, where transparency earns respect. Threatening lawsuits does little to convince fans that outcomes are genuine. Instead, it signals that protecting an image has become more important than open accountability.
Brought it up, wants to do testing. And he wants to do a set date before the fight. Okay, so he did the cycle, he did whatever, and now he's gonna try to take a piss test and clear it and be like, oh, I'm clean. That doesn't count. Okay, it doesn't count. With the money that he has, you can have a doctor clean your system in over 24 hours. Cheeto Vera just went on that podcast and said, you know that. So him doing this is another scam that he does. He's a bullshit artist. He just lies. Everybody knows he's on juice. He's admitted taking peptides. There's doctors that have him in the office saying we're giving him peptides on their website. So like, it's just bullshit. And I don't even care about the steroids thing. It's just like, what are we doing here? He has every advantage. He gets to pick the refs. He gets to pick the fucking judge. It's like, come on.
Dylan Danis, who shares a contentious history with Jake Paul, posted photos that reignited scrutiny, while Michael Bisping's critique struck with calm precision. Bisping noted that Paul's opponents were often retired, aging, or celebrity adjacent, and that his lone bout against a peer-level boxer, Tommy Fury, ended in defeat. That loss has become a cornerstone for critics, who argue that legitimacy in boxing can't be claimed without consistently facing prime, hungry professionals.
There has never once in Jake Paul's career been any talk of that sort, of anything to do with the fight being anything but a real fight that has exactly the same situation as any professional fight. And that's exactly the same thing here for the Anthony Joshua fight. It's just beyond mind-blowing that people would think that. Anthony Joshua was on record saying that if he didn't finish him in the first round, that would be disappointing, that it would be a failure. The narrative changed as we got closer to fight night and obviously post-fight, and I understand why, but they were pretty adamant it would take max 2 rounds to knock out Jake Paul.
The FBI raid narrative added yet another layer to public perception. Even when no charges are filed or incidents remain unresolved, repeated brushes with controversy shape how people view him. In the fight world, where reputation can matter as much as a record, each headline compounds the sense that chaos seems to follow Jake Paul wherever spectacle is being monetized.
In the public eye, but today YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.